Hey, big shout out to Mercy of Mercy's Little Show. Congratulations. Looking forward to seeing what you produce. Congratulations to Mr. Mercy's Little Show. Good job there. And to James, the big man on Mercy's Little Show, who will be a brother soon. So that's really awesome. Mercy is consistently just a great person to subscribe to and to chat with in the comments and everything like that. So I was really excited by her big news. This is Sleepy Vlog 61.1. I've been wanting to do vlogs, building up all this stuff I want to talk about in vlogs for quite some time now, and keep not being able to do it or feeling intimidated that I have too much I want to say. So I decided I'll just split it up into lots of vlogs and call them point one, point two, etc. I'm not sure. Maybe there'll be three of them or something. But last weekend was a big comic book weekend for me. You know, usually there's not that much comic book fun going on the weekends, but last weekend was Rose City Comic Con, and so I went on a Saturday, and it was my first comic book convention ever. I want to call it Comic Book Con, not Rose City Comic Con. I want comic books. I don't know. Why does that bother me? I don't know. Great cover to the program by Michael Allred. I did not get to see Michael Allred, except, well, with a crowd around him, I saw him. His table was very crowded in the artist alley. But I really only went for half of Saturday. I had stuff to do with my daughter, and then I was so sleepy I took a nap before I went. And so I stayed for about 3.5, 4 hours, pretty much closed down the convention. And I went to about 3.5 panels, and I explored the exhibitor floor just briefly. Here's my whole haul. Let's see. Jimmy Olsen, number 143. This is from the Kirby period of Jimmy Olsen. Part of my goal of collecting all of Kirby from his 1970s DC runs. This is, all right, let's start, because this is the next one, 144. I owned a few of these a long time ago, but I don't own any of them now. Well, now I own 3 of them. So I'm pretty psyched these are in nicer condition than I usually get at my local comic book stores when I buy old Kirby comics. And this one is cut off. It's actually 146, but apparently the cover was not aligned right when they cut it. So yeah, there's the white part that was supposed to show, and then more white part. I think I just grabbed these 3. I didn't have a whole lot of time for browsing, but I saw them and was kind of excited. I love to collect, for whatever odd reason, the 52 big pages, 25 centers from the DC early 70s era. For some reason, those really catch my imagination as the nostalgic side of me as a collector. So that was it as a haul. I didn't really want to spend money, and I didn't. Other than that, I didn't buy anything from artists. My brief wandering through the exhibitor hall or the artist alleys, I wasn't sure what to do. It sounds lame, but because I would just look at the tables and it looked like you weren't supposed to go up unless you wanted to spend money. That's how I felt. They looked like people having displays, and they either had people at the tables who they seemed to be selling stuff to or chatting with friends, or they were busy looking down. They weren't like looking up and smiling at people going by or anything. And I think if I stayed a little longer, I would have started approaching artists. I did notice several artists who I think of as kind of famous artists in my mind that were being pretty much ignored and had no one coming up to their tables at all. One of them was Eric Larson of Savage Dragon fame, one of the founders of Image Comics. I can't remember who the other ones were. Michael Allred had a big crowd around his table, so that was nice. Of course, he's kind of local. They might have just been friends of his, or they might have been fans. I don't know for sure. I really loved the panels that I went to see. The comic book nerd in me, I guess. There was a Jack Kirby tribute panel, which had each member of the panel chose one Jack Kirby comic or Jack Kirby moment even to discuss. So Kurt Busiek talked about a story that Kirby has claimed to be one of his favorite stories that he ever wrote about Boys Ranch. I forget the title of it. And then someone else, Joe Keatage, talked about one splash page from an issue of 2001 A Space Odyssey. Some college professor, I think it was a college professor, talked about how he felt the Marvel age really started with Avengers #4, where Captain America's brought back from his being frozen in a glacier. And he pointed out that this was the first time Jack Kirby ever worked on, and almost everyone thinks Jack Kirby did the plots and Stan Lee just did the scripts. At the most, Stan Lee might have had some involvement with the plots. So they attribute all of this to Kirby. But the first time that Kirby was working on Captain America after he had experience as a soldier in a war. So he created Captain America, did about 10 or 15 issues, then was drafted or volunteered, I'm not sure which, and went off to World War II, where he was a scout in Europe, going ahead of the troops to get the lay of the land and figure out where the Nazis are, and he saw a lot of action. And so when Captain America is brought back in Avengers #4, there's this whole shell shock PTSD, whatever you call it, syndrome going on, and this fellow felt that set the tone for the Marvel universe of characters that are traumatized in one way or another. Nice theory. I mean, I don't know. Someone else talked about a 2-page story that is at the end of one of these Jimmy Olsens I bought, in fact. I wonder which one. This one right here. This tiny 2-page story, which is kind of a filler at the back of this issue of Jimmy Olsen, Tales of the DNA Project, about this artificial man that's sent off into space to bring the genetics, to hide the genetics of Superman off somewhere in the universe. Anyway, it was really cool. I just really loved it. The Kirby geek in me totally geeked out. That panel was quite full and was people more in my age range, 40s and 50s, I would guess. There were younger people there too, but all the other panels I went to were less well attended and mostly younger fans, I think. I mean, like as in 20s and 30s instead of 40s and 50s. And of course, as probably most of you guys know, I mean, most of you probably have gone to comic book conventions way more than me. The vast majority of people were not in the panels. They were wandering around looking at each other in costumes and such. And one of the people at the Kirby panel was Kurt Busiek, and then I went to the Kurt Busiek panel that was just completely devoted to his comic book, The Autumnlands, Tooth and Claw, which had Kurt, moderator, and the artist Benjamin Dewey. And I loved that panel. I mean, I love this comic book, but I wasn't expecting to love the panel on the comic book. But, and this is a comic book I probably should talk about more, because every month when it does come out, it's on hiatus right now. It's the thing I'm most excited about. So, and as many of us had suspected, it is Kamandi influenced. Busiek said for years he would ask DC every now and then, could I write a Commandy comic? And they would always tell him, sorry, we're holding that back because there's some other star writer who wants to write Commandy. And he said frequently that would be Grant Morrison. So that's kind of a comic book that never was, a Grant Morrison Commandy, unless there's still plans for it in the future. And the more he thought about Commandy, the more he thought you lose either way. Either you try to do what Jack Kirby did and you can't do it as well as Jack Kirby, or you try to go off in a completely different direction than Kirby, and then you lose because everyone says, well, that's not the Kirby Commandy that we all love. So then he started thinking about how to do something based on his love of Commandy that was different. And he apparently started thinking about, or was reading and influenced by the science fiction author Jack Vance's Dying Earth books. And I own a volume that has all 4 books in it, and I couldn't find it. I wanted to show it to you. I don't know how many of you know of Jack Vance, but he's kind of this super pulpy science fiction writer who's also kind of brilliant. He's like your dream pulp writer, and he has quite the cult built up around him. I think there's a small press that's devoted to just reprinting every single thing Jack Vance ever wrote in these high quality editions, and people sort of fundraise and subscribe to do that. But everything he does looks like just this colorful pulpy stuff with purple prose and everything. But the Dying Earth books, which are amongst his most famous within the cult of Jack Vance, and sort of in certain inner circles of science fiction, they're influenced a lot of other writers. Gene Wolfe, for instance, or Lucius Shepard, or lots of writers have done Jack Vance influenced work. Anyway, in the Dying Earth books, it's way in the distant far future of Earth, where Earth is dying. It's like everyone knows Earth's in its last days, and everything is magic, only there's hints that the magic really was technology once and has turned into magic. And so if you've read Autumnland's Tooth and Claw, you can sort of see how that applies. And then he started bringing in lots of other influences, and I can't now remember what they all are. Benjamin Dewey, the artist, was a fascinating and very intelligent person to listen to also, and clearly very into science and stuff. So he's into all kinds of science, but he's very into getting these animals' faces right. So there's a lot of talk about the decisions on what the animals would be and the like. So, as you know, I love Commandy, and this captures something. It's completely different from Commandy, really, but there's still, I can see that's pulling on me, and to know that Jack Vance was a big influence too strengthens my understanding of why I like this book so much. Every issue has like the beginning of some pulp novel in it. And these paintings are all by Benjamin Dewey. They always credit made-up people. Like this one says, illustrated by the Otopa brothers. But in each issue, it's Kurt Busiek kind of draws from some different older magazine pulp novel kind of thing, or not always pulp novels, but other things that he draws upon. So he didn't explain further how or if this stuff really connects to the big story, but I'm going to go back and look at these some more. So I'm really excited for more Autumnland's Tooth and Claw. Sorry for going on for that so long. Another panel I went to was devoted just to Shudder by Joe Keatage and Leila Del Duca. I was unsure of her name. In both, and Joe Keatage was a really great public presenter, and Del Duca seemed really cool too. and they had this fun, relationship with each other. Actually, and I also saw a little bit of Kelly Sue DeConnick and her artist on Bitch Planet, DeLandro, Val DeLandro, I guess. In each of these pairs, I noticed how the artist was kind of still in a bit of a state of shock. Now I'm getting lots of attention. And I felt like maybe the writers, in the way the image works and the way modern comics work, the writers are like the rainmakers in the lives of these artists. Dewey from Autumnlands was very specific, saying, now I can make a living doing comic books, and now everybody, or people are noticing my work. So it was very much, Busiek has lifted me up in my career. And there was a bit of that, less explicitly maybe, with Del Duca, and having seen that under the current with DeLandro too. But then I feel like maybe there's also the frisson. Once you've helped this artist get a lot of attention, you want to make sure not to lose him or her. Particularly Keatage was constantly flattering Del Duca, although that might also just be his personality. But yeah, there is. So while I really enjoy going to panels and stuff, there is the danger of the personalities behind the comics making you want to read the comics, and part of me wants to remain pure as a reader and not get too sucked into all of, the more extreme thing is being friends with writers or artists, and then you really can't judge their work. But it did affect me, and even though I haven't yet read my Shudder Volume 1, I went ahead and ordered Shudder Volume 2 through In-Stock Trades, and that'll be coming in soon. So, I will be back with more of my adventures in comic books. For those of you who like to be bored by all of that, I want to talk about that, about Omega Men, about Scooby-Doo, about heavy metal. So stay tuned for point 2.